the core reason, if I look back with hindsight 2020, right? Everything I did was for validation, even joining the Marines, because Marines are dope.
On today's episode, we have Blake Norton, one of the producers of this podcast with Blue Form Media. We talk about mental health. We talk about military service. We talk about the human design. Altee goes through some human design with them and how that will benefit everyone. So we hope you enjoy. Welcome back to the Healing Works podcast. All right. We were just talking right before now, and then we announced that we're here. So we're here. But no, we're here today with the producer, one of the producers of Blue Form Media, Blake Norton. Say hi. The illustrious. We should add that in some of the calls I'm on. People refer to people as illustrious. So the illustrious Blake Norton.
Yes.
Oh, yes,
that
please.
sounds very,
What other adjectives?
yeah,
Please refer
illustrious,
to me.
magnificent, wonderful.
I like it.
Magnificent is
Yeah.
good.
There you go.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a high compliment. But yeah, I'm kind of like a third host for. I don't know. I'm on here quite often, but I like it. You know, we just have a lot of interesting conversations, so I'm always ready to mic up with anybody.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, because on the last one we talked some about stress, some about PTSD.
That's right.
Because Blake was military. So again, thank you for your service.
Thank you,
sir.
I got to clear that up. My military career was pretty bland. But I got some spicy dreams from some contract work I did later. So, yeah.
Oh, yes,
So I can't
True.
thank you for your service. I'll just pass that on to the guys that were, in 6 deployments.
In deep. Yeah.
Yeah. 10-hour firefights every day. Right. Like those kind of guys. But
Well, it was contract work, but it was still service to the country, to the planet, to humanity as a whole.
Maybe.
Under
right?
the guise of
Maybe.
yeah.
under the guise of that, for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Under the guise of military.
And you couldn't have done that without your training in the military, which...
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's a sacrifice. Anybody in uniform or doing contract work or anything, it's a sacrifice for sure. You got to sacrifice a lot to go do that line of work. Whether or not that line of work is justified or noble, that's kind of the question now. It's like,
Yeah.
I think as citizens, we have to be less apathetic about those purposes. I personally like to praise the military. I think some of the special forces and military people are like some of the best Americans out there.
Right.
But we cannot, as citizens, be apathetic towards the reasonings behind these actions.
Right.
Right.
But I think, don't you think that the people that go to serve, though, like their intentions are good? Like the reason,
that's
maybe
that's
why
a better way
everything
to
is
say it.
set up, or
Yeah.
what their
That's a really good way to
their
say it.
intention, like that group of they that
Yes.
right? But the actual people who enlist and serve, like their
totally.
intention is to serve God and country, right? I mean, that is,
And I think
so
that's
beautiful.
uniform off across any army, like that's ever existed, good or bad. Like, look at World War II, the Axis and the Allies. Like every soldier's intention was like just to go serve his country and make it home alive.
Right.
Totally.
Right. So good intentions, but a lot of good intentions stacked up can be weaponized in a different direction, I think.
Sure, because you've always got good versus evil, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
that can be used.
This
both
is
ways.
true. Yeah. But at the same time, I think there's also variances of levels like in anything in life. But that's where, I'll always say whether someone's in for 6 months, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 30 years, like
Right.
it's still giving up civilian life to go do,
That's true. Yeah.
to go serve a higher cause, which is what most,
Because I think
what
it
all
is,
do. Yeah. So,
whether the war is justified or the cause or anything, but the person's intentions are good.
right.
And they did sign a blank check. Like, even if you're just a supply clerk,
Right.
just accountant, like, you could essentially be in harm's way more than the average citizen, and you could possibly give your life. Because if you're on a military base or target, if a war breaks out, you're more than likely going to get targeted, like a military base
Right.
is a target, right? An airfield, whatever. So if you're in the military service, the likelihood of that is higher. And I think that's where the honor comes from, is like they stepped up to be
That willingness.
to be the first
Yes.
casualty of whatever.
And that's the point. That's like they're like in everything in life, like at the gym, there's people that casually work out and there's people that intensely work out, right? There's people that are pro bodybuilders and down to, not even down to, and then, the scale goes to people that show up because it's good for their, mental health and whatever it is. They just enjoy moving their body. So, but I'll congratulate all of them.
For being
Right. And that's the same thing.
A lot of them leave their families, and a lot of them, and even if you don't ever, it's not like I know a ton about the military, but even if you don't go into combat or, put yourself in harm's way, just the training in itself, the mental and emotional toll that it takes on you to be aware of what goes on in the world, I think is enough to possibly destroy any human being without some skills on how to.
Yeah, and it's exactly
engineer that.
Like, that's a really good point, because, and to your gym analogy, it's like almost the same. You have all levels of people in the gym. You got guys that are like your level. They're dedicated. They're showing up. They have a reason why to be there. They know exactly what they want out of the military. They usually end up in like a special forces group or something. But then you have a lot of people that are just trying to mooch off of a system. I just want free college. And so to me, having served in the military, seeing all of that, the blanket statement of like, thank you for your service, to me, I know which basket to put that in.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm like, oh, that's these guys. But, seeing a, 60, somebody who's 60 pounds overweight wearing the same uniform as you, right? And like just there for whatever, just to get the benefits and free college. And it's,
that's a different intent.
it boils your blood. And so there's a lot of people in the military that are deserving of the thanks. And there's probably the majority of people are not deserving of the thanks. And so I hope that stirs the pot. I hope people get pissed.
Yeah.
On that note,
there's people doing the work and there's people mooching.
Right.
But
Well, and I think that's,
with anything.
right. Yeah, with anything that comes in all areas of life. And it boils down to what people are willing to do. At the same time, the reason that for me, it's like, thank you in a blanket, not just, to say it, but a thank you in a blanket is because, like you said, like
that's really all you could do, though.
Right.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, all of them do sign that blank check that in the asterisk in the very fine print at the bottom says payable up to the ultimate sacrifice, which is your life.
It's true.
Right. So
there's a lot of fine print when you sign up for the military that you don't read. But no, not to sound disingenuous or like, or pretentious, like, hey, you shouldn't be thanking me or whatever.
Right.
Like it's just accepted and it's given.
Absolutely.
To the people that deserve it, I think.
Right.
So everyone's like, oh, Blake, thanks for your service. And I'm like, I'll pass it on to the guy who's 6 foot under,
Yeah.
Like,
well, and that is, and I was going to get to that. I do appreciate that though, because that's humility and that's knowing those that came before you and those that, paid the ultimate price for the country and the freedoms that we, that we have here, which are great.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so that, I like that because that's leadership, right? A true leader will pass that on, will pass the praise on to those that, they want to pass the praise on, that should get the light and everything like that, right? It's like, hey, your team did a great job. Well, it's not me. Thank my team.
Yeah, it was those guys.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, they're like, nice job, Kevin. But you're like, no, it was the team.
Well, it's like, whether it's football or basketball or any sport, when, they take the MVP, what's really always good to see, and that happens in battalions, that happens in
everything.
With forward commanders and stuff like that, when they're like, hey, you guys executed, you guys, like the NBA finals just happened. I didn't watch any of it, which is kind of weird, but I like to watch football. I love all sports, but, the Nuggets won, and I think they were talking to, Jokic, great basketball player, but they were, like, hey, you did such a good job. And he's like, well, look at my team. You know what I mean? And that's always that's why I love that you said that, and just wanted to highlight that because
you give credit where credit's due.
right. And that's what's needed more I think in this life is there's a lot of selfishness, right?
Oh, totally.
And so it's great to say you're welcome. Hey, thank you for your service. Hey, you're welcome. But like, hey, yes, but make sure you thank everyone else too. Make sure that you realize that, the people
Pass
that, stormed the beaches of Normandy and the people that like really had to
thank your great grandpa, thank them,
strap up and,
and
go into fear and imminent death.
Exactly. Yeah. And like whether or not the war is justified at all, it's the action, it's the intention behind it, like you were saying. And I think that's where it's awesome. But most veterans that I speak with or that I'm still in contact with, they're like, they feel that same way. It's like, hey, we'll accept, I accept that, but on behalf of someone else. And it's, I don't know. I never get military discounts. I never ask for those. I hate that. If I was like actively serving, like with a uniform on at a base, like getting a military discount would make sense. It's also just smart marketing. If you're, if you're a business around a base and you offer that, that's just smart. But I hate asking about that because I do not want to appear entitled, because I know a lot of people that serve, and some people have done literally nothing. They just completed boot camp. And then I have some people that were the guys that have all the medals on their chest and the combat. They never ask for that.
They don't advertise.
And that's what we call honor.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Because
like 10% off at Texas Roadhouse is not going to bring your buddies back. It's like, why even? I think it's bad karma to be like, I deserve this. I deserve that.
And I agree with, I totally hear what you're saying. I was in line at Cafe Rio. This is imprinted on me because this was probably 2010 or 2011.
Oh, it's been a while.
Yeah, this is 12 years ago. I was in line at Cafe Rio, and there was a police officer in front of me, and I offered to pay for his meal because I like to do that. If I see military or if I see police, I like to pay for their meal. Just as not like, hey, just as a kind gesture. Like you put a lot on the line. Right. Like the least I can do is buy you lunch. And he was like, hey, I appreciate that, but no, thank you. Like, I do it because I love to do it. I don't need handouts from people. I don't need similar kind of thing, right? Yeah. Like I don't need the discount here, but there's a way to do it. Shook my hand and was like, hey, the way you can thank us most is by being a good, upstanding citizen. Yeah. So he's like, you're a big dude. Like, hey, when you go places, like be that example, like try and,
that's a good
be that light, dispel criminality and, not get involved, but like, be a good citizen.
So would you say he handled it very well?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because he wasn't like, I don't need that.
He was very polite and just said, hey, I appreciate the willingness.
Yeah.
But I got this. Mm-hmm. Like I'm good to pay for my own
the taxes are already paying me.
Right? Yeah. Right. So, and in different formats,
if he was like the officer that like saved your daughter or something, that would be different. He'd probably say, okay.
Yeah.
Like, because that's like a more like intimate, like, hey, an
exchange.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Or like, hey, you were the guy that, I was on my last, because I've had officers pull me over and they saw like I'm pulling out my IDs and they saw my military ID, and I literally got like $5 in my bank account. I'm just crawling out of a divorce, like, we're talking about mental health, just not in a good spot.
Right.
And then the officer saw my military ID and he's like, hey. And he's kind of like gathering it. Like my car is full of shit. Like,
You're like, oh, I live. Stuff. This is my car and my home.
TV's on the front seat,
This is my living room.
I'm like, and so they like let me off. They're like, hey man. And he was like, hey, I hope things turn out for you. And I was like, that's all I needed to hear. And I was like, I'm not getting a ticket. Like I was speeding to like a job interview because I lacked the mental and physical discipline to like get up on time.
Right.
And like go to this job that I didn't want. Because, I think a lot of military guys come out of the military and they feel like they're not doing anything useful anymore. Yeah. There was a level of pride, even if they're like the shittiest military guy, just what we call a shitbag. Like they're they're fat, they're overweight, they don't help the team, they kind of burden everybody down. There's still a level of pride in that guy's head that I am a Marine or I am an Army Ranger, soldier, fill in the blank.
Right.
And there's there's just more and more fat people in the military. Let's just be honest. It's bad.
Blake's really hung up on that.
I'm hung up on that. But like, there's a ton of people that toe the line, and there's a lot of people that don't. So, but even the people that don't, they still have a level of pride attached to that.
Well,
it seems like I was going to say, it seems like more of a purpose than
it's
working
a sense
in an
of
office
purpose, and that's where you see a lot of people come out of military. I would say, not only the things that they've seen and done attributes to the PTSD, but that lack of purpose is, I think, something, and I can't identify or speak to it exactly. So, don't take this the wrong way, anybody.
Me if I'm,
but it's that lack of, because we see it in a lot of men, we see it in a lot of women, right?
Yeah.
Is when you don't have that purpose. That's when the depression, the anxieties,
everything
the worthlessness starts creeping in, because you don't feel that you're doing anything for a cause.
Especially for men.
Yes.
That's because I was telling my barber the other day, her name's Lily. She's awesome. But we were talking about that.
I like the name Lily.
In the
Shout
chair.
out to Lily.
She's great. And she cleaned me out. I'm looking somewhat
fresh. I you know what, you were talking and I was like, those lines are really good.
Yeah, it does look really
I was like,
nice.
does he do that? Or
No.
I was
I have not coordinated
okay.
enough. I still write my name like this with my tongue out.
B-L-A.
All one hand.
Yeah, exactly.
With a crayon.
With a knife. With a knife. You carve it in.
It's easier for her. That's why it's a knife, not a crayon. But yeah, we were talking about that, and society places value. Like, our value inherently is based, like, we learn about society and it teaches us our value, right? Whether it's like a microcosm, like in your home or in a family, like everyone has a little bit different. But as a culture in Western world, like, a man's value is not inherent.
Right.
Like, he doesn't just become valuable all of a sudden. A woman is different because they can create life.
Right.
And so women are protected and valued in almost every culture because that's what's sacred to move the genetic
Humanity
line
forward.
And and so whether people disagree with that or not, or they want to pull out some feminist bullshit or whatever, it's like that's just how society is.
Right.
And so an 18-year-old girl has more value towards society than an 18-year-old boy, unless there's a war going on.
Right.
Then the girl is protected and put away. That's what's happening in Ukraine right now, right? Is all the men that were of fighting age, they had to stay in the country. They weren't allowed to leave, and they're getting slaughtered. It's war against the Russians, and that's a whole nother can of worms to talk about. But all the women, they still got to go get their. I heard someone call it like their hot girl summer. They just got put into Europe. They're all in the UN. They just go out. They get to go party in Prague and in Berlin, and they have all these programs to shelter them and hold them as refugees and stuff. And there's a ton of Ukrainian women that have gone there. And I'm not saying the whole country or whatever, but the majority of women have been moved out of the Ukraine because it's a war zone. So, and then you're like, well, if it's an 18-year-old boy and an 18-year-old woman, it's like, well, the woman has more value intrinsically,
Right.
because she can bear children. So,
Right.
But the man has a different type of value. Now he can serve a purpose, right? He can be the warrior that defends his country. And I don't agree with what's going on in Ukraine. I think it's all we're being lied to, just like every conflict in history. But that like concept is always held true. So a man has to like earn his place in society and find it. And so that's why like women kind of like attractive older men, because they're more established. They've from 18 to like 30, that guy has either busted his ass and gotten his wealth and his life in order,
Right.
or he hasn't.
Well, and you take it, say an 18-year-old boy that goes into the military and that's your identity.
Yes.
And then you're out. Then what? Then who are
Exactly.
you? What's your purpose? And you have to start all over with all that trauma. Then what?
Yep.
Dude,
Then you
you
call
just
us.
nailed it. Yeah, then you call these guys. You call Kevin and Altee, and they'll teach you about the heart wall. They'll teach you about, heart coherence, getting out of your
Yeah,
subconscious.
and that's a good point, because it's the same thing with men going into military or women and like maybe serving a mission for your church or something that you dedicate, that you sacrifice, stop civilian life, go do for a segmented period of time, period of time. And then when that's done, you see a lot of young men into men start floundering.
Oh, totally.
Because they don't it was put me in the system, tell me what to do, and I'll do it.
Exactly. Simple. Right. I knew what to wear, in the military. And same with the Mormon mission, because I did both.
Yeah.
And it's like, I knew exactly
what to wear. Well, I didn't do military. Sorry, I can't say so.
Yeah, Mormon mission. Yeah. But it's very similar, right?
Right.
Yeah. I remember being in the missionary training center, and they used the same bunk beds and the same sheets that the Marine Corps did. Just like a different color, but same scratchy wool, everything. You have a nice bed sheet, but the top blanket is just a military issue wool blanket, and the MTC uses it's like same bunk bed, like to the T, like rickety.
Same living quarters and everything. Yeah,
different. It was more like a dorm,
I guess same, not quarters, the same living.
Yeah.
Furniture.
Very
setup. Okay.
Very similar.
Right.
And so I was thriving. I was like, this is just like.
This is my jam.
This is just like home.
This.
So yeah. But it's interesting because I think a lot of young men, especially men, a lot of people these days, men or women, the societies and cultures, especially in Utah, that we've created. If I look back at my youth, I was addicted to validation,
right?
More than anything. I wanted to be useful, so to be of value to my family and to my church and to my culture and everything, I had to do X, Y, Z all the time. And growing up, my family was I was a B and C student, right? I graduated. Mm-hmm. And nobody looks at a college degree and says, hey, you don't get a different college degree if you were a C student or an A student, right? It's the same.
They say B's and C's get degrees.
Yeah, B's and C's get, exactly. But
I thought it was D's get degrees.
D's
no,
get degrees.
I've heard someone said
B's
and C's get degrees, and someone said so do D's.
Yeah, so do D's. Yeah. I mean, it's at the end of the day, you get your degree. If it's up on the wall behind your office, nobody cares if you got straight A's.
Right.
And so, but my family did. I was the oldest child in a Mormon family, and so my parents did their best, but the expectations were so high. I never had any control of what I could do. I couldn't. It was their agenda, 100% that I had to be on, and I am not one to I will follow the rules or play within the rules or be in the box, but I want to explore that on my own. And so, if my mom told me to do my homework, I'd be like, "Nope, can't do it now." Because if I do my homework now, my mom wins.
It's compliance.
So, yeah,
you're like, I won't be compliant.
I'm like, let me.
I'll get it done. I'll be responsible.
I'll accomplish the task within my own.
On my own terms and
my own parameters. Yeah, and that's I can't really hold that over my family. They were just doing the best they could with what they had. But
really, and you look at it, and it's the work that we do too. It's generational programming and conditioning, social conditioning, right?
Yeah.
And there's benefits to that because there's benefits and drawbacks to everything. But with the social conditioning, it doesn't really play to who Blake was designed to be in this world.
I never got to pursue or find out who I was in the culture I was raised in, and so I was just addicted to validation. Though I wanted to be in the good graces of my parents, my uncles, my family, my church leaders, even the girl that I was interested in. I wanted her parents to like me if we were ever hanging out with them, or and there's so much pressure to be like a good priesthood holder all the time,
right?
But that's defined by other people, and if I ever did anything that was in my strengths or everything like that, if it rubbed people wrong, then I was wrong, and I was a burden, and I was a problem, and all the time. And so, I did everything in my life. I went on a Mormon mission, not because I believed it was true or knew it was true, which is all semantics anyway. Because if you know something, you don't require belief anymore. So the whole point of having faith. And then we all, we say, I know stuff. I know this is true. I know the X, Y, Z. I know Joseph Smith. I know this stuff. I know this was a prophet. All that. That's just a bunch of lies. That's just to say I'm complying with the culture. I'm complying. I know this. And when people say, I know God's real, it's like, even if you do, no one else can really substantially prove that. So You're just taking away the belief. You're taking away the exercise of faith because you're saying, I know something. Like, I know this table is here. I don't have to believe it because I know
you don't
it's
have
right
to
here.
hope that it's there.
It's real
and
to my
haven't-
senses. Yeah. And so it's like, you know, I wasn't there when Joe Smith knelt down in that grove or, you know, translated the book. I wasn't there when, you know, Jesus broke bread with his apostles. I wasn't there. So I have to exercise faith to learn that. So that's like the whole semantics of that, but that's part of the culture. It's like, if I say these things, I get validation. Oh, if I say a perfect testimony over the pulpit, people would slap me on the back, tell me how much they felt the Spirit and how righteous I was. And I just fed off of the validation of my uncles and my dad and everybody around me. And so when I went to the Marines, it was the same thing. I was seeking validation. I was kind of like a kiss ass a little bit, but
looking for some attaboys.
But I could back it up, right? So, but yeah, I craved the validation of the people that I admired, as every young person does. But I was so addicted to that, it did everything. That I got married at 21 because I wanted validation, because that was the next step. That was the next. And man, you talk about a Mormon wedding at a young age. They're just pouring it on you. It's like a fire hose of validation. Such a lovely day. There's so much ritual behind it too. If you get married in a temple, right? And there's nothing wrong with any of these things, but we're so unaware of what this does to a person. And then you think about that. You go on a mission, right? And you can relate to this.
Yeah.
There's so much purpose and there's so much validation, and you're doing the work and you're getting validated. And
you're doing the right thing.
Yes. And then you come home and you're even more validated because you can go hang around Provo and be like, I'm a return missionary. And the girls go, oh, you know, but if you're not, like, get the hell out of Provo. What are you doing here?
Right.
Like, there's no medium. It's just like you're either validated or you're like shunned. And I think it's gotten better now, but this was, 2007, 8, 9, 10, 12.
Yeah. How old are you now?
I'm 34.
So 34, looking back at 19, 21,
Yeah,
19 missionary,
22,
21 getting married. It's like you have some perspective now that's different than at that age, and you can see that conditioning that played out.
I could see what my real drivers were. Was that validation?
Yeah.
Every time.
And I think most of us men, seek that, women too, but, in looking at, June is Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. May was mental health in general, and we'll get into a little of that. But like to the mission, like when you say come home, get married, like I remember being at the president of the mission's house the night before we flew home. And that was, when did I get home? Oh, I was bugged because we flew home on July 5th, meaning that we spent July 4th at the president's home. Oh, nice. And I'm like, why can't you just fly us home on the 3rd? Because I really like the 4th.
Yeah,
I love the 4th as a holiday, America, and I love fireworks. So I'm like, what the hell? Like, but anyway, when we were there, you have your little devotional before, everyone departs. And it was like, hey, your next step is to get married. And I was scratching my head because for the audience, I didn't get married till 34. So I was shunned by society's standards. No, but like I scratched my head because I was like, well, there's more I want to learn and more I want to develop and grow into before I get married, because what stood out on my mission was not only purpose, but like how much depth and meaning there is to life rather than just going through the motions and checking the box and doing the next right thing. Right. Right. And so I think looking back now, I think that was, part conscious, but I think there was a lot of me subconsciously that was like, okay, like the next step isn't just to like get married. And then look, you get married at a young age and develop and
you can have a great life.
Still do all that you need to do. And everyone's, perspective is in the eye of the beholder. And that's why no one's life is the same as anyone else's, which is great. Right. But I just think it's one of those things that made me scratch my head and be like, why would the next thing be to just get married? Like, we just serve such a great purpose, and I learned so much about not only, the gospel, but then myself and, being so attentive and going to sleep on time and waking up on time and, maybe not good health because we ate top ramen and frozen burritos all day long. So it wasn't about that. But I think that could be looked at and implemented better. But but building disciplines, building habits, which still serve me to this day, right?
Yeah.
Still, when you leave your friends and you leave, like going to the military, when you leave all that was cush and comfortable and you go do something for somebody else, right? You're serving everyone else. It's not about you. And so, there's things I learned, especially, being self-sufficient, not having, your mom there to wake you up at, 5:45 every morning.
It's kind of like a coming of age,
right,
for a Mormon is to go on a mission. And like, there's a ton you can learn. It's what you make of it, like with anything. But I guess the reason I brought all that up was the core reason. If I look back with hindsight, 2020, right? Everything I did was for validation. Even joining the Marines, because Marines are dope. They're badass. Mm-hmm. Like they look good. The uniforms are awesome. And like a lot of guys, they join. They ask, they're like, "How many of you guys joined just to get some tail?" Like. Probably 50% of them are like, how many of you guys joined for college? And there's like one Chinese kid who's like, you're an idiot. You should have joined the National Guard. Like they ask you that when you're first week there.
Right.
And they're like, how many of you guys joined because you want to see combat and serve your country? And there's like 10 people. Mm-hmm. And they're like, right on.
Right.
But everybody joins up just for the reputation, the
status or the
validation aspect.
Because you've watched those commercials.
Yeah, I want to be that
guy.
The
few, the proud, the Marines.
We always asked each other, and they were like, what commercial got you? And for me, it was this guy climbing this like cliff. It's like Red Rock Cliff. Mm-hmm. He's free climbing it, and he gets to the top, and he fights a dragon with a sword, because like he makes it to the top, and he like becomes a Marine, and this like sword appears in his hands.
Yep.
And then he kills a dragon.
Yep.
And I was like, sweet.
Yeah.
Doing it.
That's cool. But that a lot of people join for validation, for the reputation, for everything. So they'll endure that. But then once you get in and the validation dwindles, that's where I found myself. If I could go back and redo it, I would have done it opposite. I would have joined for the experience, like, get in there. But I would have focused more on what I was doing every day. I would have stayed in. I would have pursued the things I wanted to do. And if I could go back and redo my whole life, I would, if knowing now, I'd be like, take the validation away. It doesn't mean anything from anybody. The only validation that matters is your own personal validation. Right. And so I did everything for validation. I went to church. I participated in all that stuff. I gave talks at Sunday. I was the perfect Mormon boy. And I did it all for validation. So I could just feel good and feel useful. Mm-hmm. Also, counterpart, mom and dad, you created an environment where I felt like shit all the time. And I think that's common for a lot of people.
I'm not laughing.
It's a guilt.
I'm laughing, but
it's guilt and shame.
Just because we've talked about this so often.
Yeah,
right?
It's guilt, it's shame, it's everything associated with that. If you weren't living, like my parents' love and validation there was a cost, and I had to do X, Y, Z. Mm-hmm. And the only thing that wasn't on the X, Y, Z list, there was being me over here. And then there was doing what we want you to do. And I had to play those keys in order to get the validation. And so it was it's just unhealthy in any environment, any religion, any family. And that's huge. And so you get to the military, and I was like, I only want to do things that will validate me. So in training and everything like that, and like boot camp, it was great because there was like an instant reward if I did something right. I didn't get yelled at, and I got praised, or someone pointed me out. And like that stuff still gets me. I love that. I'm like in a group and somebody, hey, shout out to Blake over here who did X, Y, Z, and I'm just like,
you're a lot. Yeah, I'm not.
But inside, I'm like,
it.
yes, because I'm wired,
yeah,
to chase and seek that validation, and that's the number one thing that screwed my mental health. Honestly, is like if I did a job where I couldn't get validation, I hated that job. I sucked at it, or I missed what I could learn because I was like just constantly in this state of like depression, unless I was like a drug addict. Mm-hmm. If I couldn't get
looking
validated.
for that next fix. Well, I was just going to say
dopamine.
A couple of things is then if you're living by those standards, then what happens when you don't get it? Where does that leave you? And that's what you had to go through, right? And then the other point I just forgot, so we'll just carry on.
Well, if it comes back.
I thought you were going to say the point that I forgot, and then you Like you forgot it earlier, but
no,
you forgot it right now.
I literally had 2 points, and
I probably have the second point.
But really, it's like, where does that leave you?
Right.
If you don't get it, then and then the other thing is what you were saying was you became if you like depressed if you didn't get it because that's all you were focused on, so you couldn't see, you didn't have the perspective that you could validate yourself or that there was fulfillment in what you were doing. Exactly. You were just focused on, are you going to, it was transactional, right? And so I'll do this and you give me this and then there I am.
Well, a limited expectation, right?
Yeah.
Which is where a lot of depression and or anxiety comes from, is an expectation of things going a certain way. And then when they don't, it's like, instead of being that may be the thing that extracts that purpose from you. Because when we seek validation, it's because we don't have that self-care and self-love enough for self that we need external people or external circumstances to validate my purpose, right? Yeah. And that's where you see that a lot with especially men, is we're always, trying to build, bigger muscle or, make more money, or because ours is consistently what have you done lately, right? When going back to the value of men and women, what you were talking about earlier. But that's where, it's such a huge thing to start caring and loving self, right? Because it's completely different. Like but like for me, like I used to go to the gym because I wanted to be strong just in case like shit hit the fan.
Yeah.
Right. But also because I wanted to look good and have people validate that. And now it's completely different for me. Like over the years, it's like now I do it because I enjoy it for me.
Yeah. And any validation that you get from it is like a bonus.
Icing on the cake. Yeah, like, right. And that's the difference. Mm-hmm. You just said it perfectly, is we want it, life should be doing things for your purpose. And if you don't know your purpose, that's where we come in. We can, the purpose comes from the heart.
Yeah.
Right?
It's like, it doesn't come from anything. Like if society's telling you your purpose, reevaluate. Like come get it from you. If your church is telling you, if your wife or if your parents are telling you what your purpose is, or even if like scripture and God is telling you what your purpose is, ignore that. It sounds bad to like ignore God, but like you are here, no matter what religion anyone subscribes to, the most divine thing anyone can do is become attuned to your own self and become the best version of true you you could possibly be.
Right.
There's definitely things that I think we should do as far as like love your neighbor, and like I think the commandments are a good starting point, but like God never really defines to you. Like you don't just get a letter in the mail from an owl like Hogwarts telling you what you're supposed to do in this life.
Right, yeah.
That's the whole point, is that you're not supposed to know. And so to come here, and I think it's really petty when people pray for, like, what should I be when I grow up? It's like, just choose something.
Yeah, try it.
Just do what you do.
Try it.
Well, that
and then
God's life,
if you try it and it fulfills you because your heart is in it, then that works, But where I think the disconnect is with that is most people can't feel that because their heart is so blocked because of past emotional injury and trauma and conditioning from growing up parents. And to your point of your parents telling you what your purpose is, a lot of times they don't even know what their purpose is. So they have no business telling you what yours. I mean, they can give you feedback, right? And say, this is your, this is a really great strength that you have. This is a characteristic that you have that is different than the other kids in the family or whatever. You know what I mean? And reinforce that in you.
Encouragement.
Exactly.
Guidance.
But there is no.
There's usually it should be that way, because I think that's how a healthy parent relationship. It's like, hey, I'm going to love this child for nothing in return, and I have just some basic expectations, like, hey, you're going to be respectful and you're going to clean up your room, and like, I'm going to teach you how to do this life.
And even if they don't, you still have to love them anyway.
I don't expect you to do anything. You can become whoever you like to be. But it's also the parent's responsibility to make sure that's a healthy outcome. Because when a kid says he's a boy, young boy says he's a girl, the parent doesn't let that happen. Like,
Right.
they don't, okay, that's okay. You can think you're a girl for as long as you want, but we're not going to do anything permanent about it until you're 18.
You're old
at
enough to
least you
choose
can
for
choose.
yourself.
But even then, it's like our brain doesn't develop till we're 25 anyway,
25, right.
which is even scarier if you look through with that lens. You just zoom in on the United States Marine Corps. Bunch of 18 to 25-year-old kids like running around with machine guns and mortars. Like, dude, you're not even developed, you know? Like,
Well, and that's why I scratched my head
Scary.
because, I started looking into this kind of stuff back then. But it was like, well, if I'm 21 and I'm supposed to get married, does that serve her and myself to the best capability? And I was like, I don't think it does.
yeah.
So it's not like I didn't look for it, but you know what I mean? I'm not saying I knew everything at all. I'm just saying like it didn't make a lot of sense to me. It was
Like maybe
confusing.
you weren't ready.
Yeah, because I was like, well, there's so much more that could be developed
Oh, man. I remember
in
feeling-
learning because
exactly that.
when I came home, we always had these little blue planners.
Oh, yeah.
And we'd fold them up and they'd fit in the, the left pocket of our, our dress
Did
shirt.
you buy the non-missionary version so you could use it in college? Like,
No, I
they
didn't.
have that?
I
They
didn't.
had the,
They
the,
sell
af-
those.
they had the aftermarket
But
one.
what I realized is that I felt like a fish out of water the first 2 weeks because, like, every hour, these planners were segmented into hours of the
Yeah.
day, just like a Covey planner.
So you were trying
Right.
to fill that time.
So that time was like, hey, how can we be purposeful? How can we be intentional? How can we really didn't use the word intentional
Different
back
vocabulary.
then,
Yeah.
but it was how can we serve?
How can you be
Right?
useful?
How can we be useful? And so every hour we would fill it with appointments or, if we didn't have any appointments, then it was straight knocking doors. It was doing something to be studying, doing something to be useful, right?
Mm-hmm.
How can we use our time to the best of our ability? Then you come home, and I remember I went to Costco with my mom, and it was like, I think it was the next day I was home, and I went to grab my planner out of my pocket to see what the
What's
rest
on
of the
schedule
day
next.
looked like, and I was kind of like, what am I doing?
Was it relieving or was it like kind of a nerve-wracking that you're like, I don't know what to do with the day?
So what it was a great question. Was when I looked for my planner, I didn't have my planner, and then we didn't have these fancy smartphones back then. I had a I had a Nokia. Which still, to this day, Nokia 3390, it was the bigger one. A lot of people had the small one, but the small one back then was $150, and I didn't have $150 coming off a mission. So the Nokia 3390 was free, but it had the Snake game, which I don't care what games your phone has right now, it doesn't compare with the Snake game.
Nope.
That game was legit.
Yeah.
That game was legit. But anyway, we didn't have these calendars and planners and everything like that readily.
Yeah, that was the Palm Pilot that came out.
There was the Palm Pilots, or you had to go buy that Stephen
BlackBerry.
Covey planner,
Or the BlackBerry came later.
the BlackBerry. I think
BlackBerry
the
came later.
Blackberries were
Okay.
like
Palm Pilot,
2005.
BlackBerry,
Yeah.
and then we got into.
I loved the BlackBerry right before the iPhone came out, and I bought the first iPhone, and I was pissed. I still don't like Apple, so anyway. But I didn't have a method outside of those planners to plan my day. But the point is that I didn't know what was going on the rest of the day. And so a couple things, because it's all about balance and perspective, is it was relieving, but then I found a huge part of myself that went and started planning, and I should have done it even better, because when you have a plan or you have, strategy, things, there's a point of letting go and letting universe and letting God 100%. And we teach that, but there's also
intention.
part of that plan of being intentional, right? If I go to the gym and I'm just like, I'm just going to do chest today. like subconsciously I'm priming myself to just do chest today. Yeah. So will my workout be as efficient and effective as if I went to the gym and I said, okay, I'm going to smoke my chest today. And these are the exercises I'm focused on. And this is how many reps I'm getting. I'm going to go progressive overload. And like by the time I leave, my tank top or my shirt's going to be filled with sweat. Yeah. And I'm going to have such a huge pump that it's going to be in my chest that it's going to be hard for me to get my shirt off. Yeah. Like those are completely different plans.
Yeah.
Right?
Then just, I'm going to do chest.
And so it's the balance of having a plan, but being adaptable with that plan. Because what happens a lot of time when I go to the gym, there's a lot of kids there, which is awesome.
Like high school kids.
Yeah, like high school kids, and that's awesome. They just tend to clog up a lot of the places that I want to go, and that's fine.
They're there for different reasons, right? Because when you're young, like how I was saying, like I did everything for validation.
Right.
You know, I got super good at pull-ups. Do you know why? Because in my high school gym, there was a hallway that could see right into that, and that's where the pull-ups was. And guess what room was right next to the high school gym? Was the dance room.
The girls' locker room.
The girls would go out there, they'd break off, do whatever they're doing. They're like in the hallway stretching for the same reasons, because they know that the dudes in the gym are going to look down the hallway. Like,
yeah.
And so that's why I was just like, I think I'll just do some pull-ups. You know, that's no reason.
Yeah, I love pull-ups.
You watching?
Yeah, like Blake gets to the point that he's doing one-arm pull-ups and he's looking back into the dance room like, hey, what's up?
When I was I weighed like $150, I could do like 30, 35 pull-ups without even breaking a sweat.
Yeah.
Like rock climber status.
That's legit.
And I was like, parkour was getting popular, and so I was dumb, and we would jump off stuff and do, parkour. Mm-hmm. We thought we were cool.
Jump and tumble.
Yeah. Later on, though, like as like YouTube got more popular, and I stopped doing parkour. I was busy in the military and stuff, but like that's when parkour like really took off, and we realized, like we thought we were cool. Yeah. Like we did some pretty cool.
Oh, we
cool
totally
stuff,
should have videoed ourselves, and then you watch these guys jump from like
in France or just
these 10-story parking structures down to like
and then like a Midwest suburb area. Like there's nothing really cool. Mm-hmm. Like like a fence.
Yeah, he jumped from a hay bale to a fence post.
Exactly.
Like, what's up?
A tractor to it. But then then you look at France and they got these like sprawling metropolis. They're like 6 stories high, like jumping down stairwells.
Yeah, like Spider-Man.
Yeah, and zipping down like pipe drains and stuff. But yeah, but my point was though, everything I did was for validation. If Blake does stuff crazy, like jumps off, does backflips off roofs and stuff. I never just did that. I only did it with people who were watching.
Watch this.
Yeah. Like, most young men are motivated. Like a pretty girl shows up, everybody stands up a little straighter and they're like, I think I could jump off that,
Oh, dude, I could totally do that.
Yeah, is she watching? Make sure she's watching. Like, that's the validation, though. So young people are always seeking that. And I think that's common for everybody. Mm-hmm. I can only speak to my microcosm of a family. I know it was more than most.